Now I'd like to introduce you to Diana Simmons. Diana is Director of New Product Commercialization at a very different company, but a company that you all will know, Clif Bar. In fact, many of you may have Clif Bars in your bags as we speak. So Clif Bar, as you know, is a leading maker of nutritious and organic foods and drinks. And Diana has been a part of this company and its growth for a decade. Joined in 2004. Clif Bar has a commitment to 5 bottom lines, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that from Diana: sustaining our business, our brands, our people, our community, and the planet. And Diana brings to the company not only a deep understanding of that sustainability commitment, but also real expertise in brand management. And Diana's, she did some consulting in the sustainability space before she joined Clif Bar. And just on my theme of where do people come from academically, I think it's interesting to note that Diana's bachelor's degree was in human biology, with a focus on environmental policy, and she has an MBA from Stanford. So Diana, we're eager to hear your story.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Aspen, for having me here. I'm excited to share my story. I don't have props like Garrett's, but I do feed people, so feel free to eat. I've discovered that if I have nothing good to say, at least you've eaten something that's tasty, I hope. So I want to start by talking a little bit about a professor way back in college who gave me job search advice. He said, do not take a job unless it scares the crap out of you. His words actually weren't that polite. But he said that because if something doesn't scare you, it's actually not a good opportunity. And I've carried that with me. And I think it really applies to change in business. There's actually another way that I think about it, and it's through a joke, and I tell jokes badly, so I will paraphrase this one a little bit. There are 2 boys, and they're twins, 6-year-old boys. One's a pessimist, and one's an optimist. The dad wants to kind of get at how they think and what's going on in their head, and so he fills the pessimist's room with toys, and he fills the optimist's room with horse manure. Sends them off to play. Checks in on them later, figure out what they're doing. The little boy, the pessimist, is sitting in this room full of toys, and he is crying. Dad, there are all these toys. My friends are going to be jealous. The instructions are hard to read. There are too many of them. The batteries are going to die, and the toys are just going to break eventually. This is just awful. The dad, oh, okay, so I'm going to go check on the optimist. Goes into the other kid's room. Mind you, a room full of manure. As a parent, I don't want to think about really how you would do that, but for the sake of the joke, the little boy is on top of this pile of manure, and he is digging, and he is ecstatic. Dad, this is great. With all this manure, there must be a pony in here somewhere. So why do I tell you all this? What's my point? It's not that I'm good at telling jokes. It's because I think the mess and the chaos and the complexity and the negative forces that a lot of us face in business are actually the potential energy for creating positive social change. It's what the Aspen First Movers program is all about. And what we need to do as leaders is harness those negative forces, often the chaos, the complexity, the messiness, and leverage it to create social change. We need to transform it. So I've learned a few things about how to do this in my experiences, and that's what I want to share. So I'll start with an example about something you're eating right there. Clif Bar made a commitment in 2012 to source sustainably certified cocoa in its food. Now, we use organic ingredients as much as possible. Over 75% of the ingredients that we buy in all our products are organic. But we wanted to figure out how to go beyond organic. As a participant in the global food system, we felt like it was really important to think not just about the environment, but about economic and social standards as well. So we found a partner, Rainforest Alliance, and Rainforest Alliance has really strict standards, really stringent requirements that support farmers and their communities, also healthy farming practices and the environment. And they could help us figure out how to do this with our food. So here I was, trying to figure out how to make 100% of the cocoa in our Clif Bar products sustainably certified. This is not a new product that I'm launching. My team launches a lot of new products, so we get to start from scratch. And I wasn't a social entrepreneur trying to figure out how to do this from the beginning. I was trying to change our 22-year-old flagship brand within a company, albeit much smaller than those many of you work for, of 350 people. So there were existing relationships, existing processes, existing suppliers of all these ingredients. Already this was getting complicated and overwhelming and feeling chaotic. So how was I going to go forward? Well, first I had to get at the big mess. Let's figure out what was there. We had 12 ingredients in our bars that were cocoa-containing ingredients. Those ingredients, we had to figure out how to source sustainably, so we had to change our recipes. We had to figure out how to make a certified traceable chain of custody for all of those ingredients, from the crop to the final bar. Okay, could do that. And now there were the packaging changes. The packaging. 13 flavors of Clif Bars in the US contain cocoa, 7 more for Canada, 3 more for other export countries, and 3 mini-sized bars. So there's 26 packages right there that we were going to have to change. Those 26 packages go into 52 different boxes at all our different retailers. 78 different packages had to change at each of 2 different bakeries. So that's a fractal. It made my head hurt. And we'd made a public commitment to do this in 9 months. Plus, we had real people behind all of this stuff that had to happen. The cross-functional teams that I work with that support our products include food supply, ingredient and packaging procurement, our food safety group, finance, brand, creative, the R&D team, of course, and my team, which does the commercialization of all the products. 1/3 of our company touches our products when we're launching or changing something. And those real people are in a company that has a values-based mission. I'm really lucky to be there. So these people are also passionate people. And I'll talk a little bit more about the challenges that can come when working with passionate people. So how did this all feel? It was completely overwhelming. I was scared, paralyzed, fill in the blank with the word. But I had to keep going. So what did I do? Decided I had to ask dumb questions. Here's the secret that I've learned, is that great leaders ask dumb questions, because dumb questions aren't actually dumb. They're just questions that you don't know the answer to. And I think that by asking those dumb questions, I was able to get at opportunities and interesting ideas and ways of creatively solving problems that I might not have had I not asked the dumb question in the first place. Paul actually alluded to this a little bit. He asked lots of questions that he didn't know answers to. And you can do that because you're a designer. I'm supposed to know the answers, but I asked dumb questions anyway. So by doing that, I exploded the details, and I found even more complexity. So of the 12 ingredients, we had 7 suppliers of our existing cocoa ingredients. Half of them didn't use Rainforest Alliance certification, didn't know what it was, weren't aware of the standards. Turns out we had to also match the flavor of the chocolate that we were going to switch. If anybody has tried different chocolates from different countries, chocolates taste different. So this was no small task. We were going to have to test all the recipes. We also were sourcing a non-trivial amount of chocolate. I needed to make sure we had 1.5 million pounds of chocolate a year to put into our bars. And that packaging I talked about, we had existing inventory of every single type of packaging. So we were going to have to figure out how to exactly match in a complex forecasting scenario the old packaging finishing completely and the new packaging beginning. So there was the potential that a decision that was good for the planet, good for people, good for communities, could actually create huge amounts of waste. And that was a huge challenge to have to take on. So this complexity and this mess was definitely there. Where did I start after that? I was in the mess. I was digging through the manure. You know, all of us learn as good leaders and good project managers, you articulate the goal. Well, in this case, that was an easy one. I'm really fortunate to be in a place that made the commitment to use the sustainably certified cocoa. So our goal was get 100% certified sustainable cocoa into new packaging in 9 months and make the products taste just the same. Okay, that was an easy goal to state, but it was still going to be hard to get there. So with my team, we then take on a practice called building a trail map. And something that we all learn when you're kind of taking on a project and making a plan is that you have to articulate the milestones and the steps and the activities. And the trail maps that we create at Clif Bar are actually different from that. We try to articulate the topography of the challenge. That means putting down all of the unanswered questions, the obstacles, the potential roadblocks, in addition to the assumptions upon which your plan is based. And then you can craft the trail through that topography to get to your summit. So what that allows me to do with my team is then, when we face challenge, not if, because there will be changes, there will be challenges we didn't anticipate, we can go back to the trail map and look at that topography and say, okay, do we need to take another route to the summit? And if we do so, what risks are we taking on? What potential challenges are we going to face by going that other route? We can see those risks and those trade-offs and have those frank discussions in a way that allows us to make educated decisions. One example in doing this is that we found out the cocoa butter that came from our Rainforest Alliance certified source melted at a lower temperature than the other cocoa butter we were using. We already had the packaging in production. We were ready to go. Do we stop? Do we take the risk? Do we figure out if we can find another ingredient supplier? Well, we pulled out our trail map and we looked at all the reasons why we could delay the launch, figure out how to make changes to the packaging if we had to find another source. But at the end of the day, that map let us look at those trade-offs and make an educated decision and take a risk. It all worked out. But regardless, we were able to look at those trade-offs clearly in a transparent way and bring that to the leadership team to be able to make the decisions. So I've dug through all the complexity and the mess. We've put out our plan. But I mentioned obstacles, and we still faced obstacles along the way. And there's a story that I think about when I think about obstacles and constraints. And I mean, even those words are negative. When I was learning to mountain bike, and I am a bad mountain biker, I was obsessed with all the rocks and the stumps and the tree branches. I don't know if anybody mountain bikes here, but you go down these skinny little trails and there's a rock, don't run over the rock, don't run over the rock, and I run over the rock and I bail. And I was given some advice. Don't look at the rock, look at the space in between the rocks, find the line. Many people skied already, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You see the obstacles in order to define them and find the space in between. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was just obsessing about the rocks. And I found that when I face challenges in these projects, we can use the constraints and use the obstacles, define them in order to then see the opportunity. And it's turning that negative energy and some of that negative complexity into some positive change. One of the examples we faced is that half of our cocoa suppliers, I mentioned, had never heard of Rainforest Alliance and weren't taking part in their standards. But half did. And so we focused on figuring out what the half that did was doing in order to overcome some of the challenges. How did they make it work, even if they were small producers? How did they achieve those standards? It took a lot of patience and a lot of persistence, but we were actually able to bring all the suppliers with us on our journey. We didn't have to go find new suppliers. So we were able to make this change and do it with our existing supplier base and actually grow the impact that we were able to have by bringing them on that journey towards sustainably certified ingredients. So some of these things are things that you might learn in business school, but there's the really, really difficult factor in making change happen that I've discovered, and that's the human factor. I mentioned passionate people. Passionate people bring their passions. They're fueled by them. That's why I go to work every day. I get fired up and excited to work because I'm working in alignment with my values, and I love that. But passionate people also bring their emotions, their stress, and their tensions, more so than in some other business environments where you might not have that come to the table. And I've learned it's important to recognize that. I'll be honest, Clif Bar is only 350 people, so a change like adding the Rainforest Alliance certification created incremental work. Everybody had full plates already, and we were asking them to do more. I met with real resistance, people who did not want to take this on. I had a team member come in once and say, there is no way we can do this. I can't do this, this, or this, and we've got this problem, and this problem. We can't make the deadline. Well, that person could have been just a crappy manager of their time, or they could have been faced with a ton of really critical, high-priority projects. But I paused because I've learned that you have to validate how they feel, because in a way it doesn't matter in the moment, the cause. What they're feeling is the obstacle, and it's important to recognize that. I mean, validating people is something we do in other parts of our lives, I think, way more naturally. With our kids, our partners, right? You validate their emotions, you value what they're feeling. And it's something I've learned now to do with my teams. It's more than listening, and it's more than just empathy. Connecting with people and letting them know that you understand the challenges that they're facing. I'm with you. I get it. I know we've got all this stuff going on. All right, so how can we work together to get through it? Was a way to overcome those obstacles. Another tool I've found to work through some of these issues where we may, be dealing with people who are overworked, stressed, and or concerned about a project is to create neutral ground, create a safe space. And sometimes, though it sounds trite to say, I put myself in their shoes, I've taken the perspective of a function that maybe is having trouble articulating in a team meeting why they think something is challenging and may not work, and I bring the issue up. By doing so, I can do it in a neutral way and set up an objective discussion about how to problem solve, rather than that person maybe feeling like it was too tough or might be volatile if they bring up that issue. One of the other tactics I've used is making sure that teams feel invested in the goal and connected to the goal. Setting up this big goal is one thing, that we want to have Rainforest Alliance certified cocoa in our products. But come on, we were putting 78 little frogs on packages. Our creative team was overwhelmed. They had to create 78 new art files for all of our packages. And by the way, 6 months later, we had planned changes for our packaging, so they were going to have to touch all the packaging files again. So I heard them. They were overwhelmed. And I could tell that they didn't feel connected to this goal. They felt like it was just extra work. So I figured out with my team how to expedite other changes that were going to happen 6 months later and incorporate those into this project so that the creative team could actually only do this once. And it was a lot more work to pull in all the other pieces, but by doing so, we were able to create a goal that was shared by that team as well, because they felt like they'd been heard, and they felt like they could now relate to the challenge and get it done and be on board. I'm convinced that valuing people can create inspired teams. Why do all of these leadership skills matter? Why am I telling all these stories? It's because existing products and existing organizations need to find ways to create change. That's what Aspen is all about. They need leaders who can transform complexity and chaos into momentum, who can ask dumb questions and put order to that, who can create trail maps that let them see the whole topography and maybe take a different route or regroup at base camp sometimes. They need people who can see obstacles as opportunities and who can value people to create inspired teams. And all of this is because I think that that negative energy, that complexity, and that chaos really is the potential energy for creating positive social change. So thank you for your time and your attention.